The Shreveport City Council will now be called to order. At this time, the chair would like to recognize Mr. Calvin Austin, who will give us the invocation, and the Honorable Oliver Jenkins will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father, we come today to converge upon this place of municipality government, and we thank you, God, for your grace and your mercy. And we ask you now, Lord God, to be with this council and those who are present that will stand and hear the business of our city, that everything that will be done and said will be done acceptable, decent, and in order. God, we call upon you in a very special manner to continue to watch over our city with all of the chaos and all of the issues that's going on. Bind us together with a spirit of love, where their peace will abide. Be with us now in this meeting in the name of our Savior. Amen.
Okay, if you'll join me in face the flag and repeat the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Bradford. Councilman Ellison.
Here.
Councilman Jenkins.
Present.
Councilman Clark.
Present.
Councilman Porter.
Present.
Councilman Lee. And Councilman Bowman.
Do I have a motion?
You do, Mr. Chair.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All those in any discussion? Please vote. And that motion is approved. At this time, I would like to recognize Mr. Bradley D. Bailey, Executive Vice President of Red River Federal Credit Union. I've asked them to come today to welcome them to the city of Shreveport. Mayor Tyler, there's never too many financial institutions. Absolutely. So we're delighted that they're in Shreveport. They are new, and a lot of people in this building do business with them. And they have an ATM machine, and I want to say welcome to Shreveport, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you very much.
Would you state your name for the record, please?
Bradley D. Bailey.
Okay, and your address?
What's our address?
So new.
He's brand new, yeah.
8530 Fern Avenue. You can tell we're really new.
Yes, that's right. We're so delighted that you're here. And I believe you brought some guests with you.
Yes, I did. This is Vicki Bryan. She's our Chief Operations Officer with Red River Credit Union. Dolores Davenport, and she's very.
Yes.
She's been well connected to the city, and I am actually the president, and I will be taking over the credit union at the end of the year. We have our long-term president, CEO, who's been with the credit union for about 45 years, who's retiring after a good career, so I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we want to say welcome to Shreveport, and we're so glad that you have crossed the state line up there and have joined us LSU Tiger fans down here. So.
Go Tigers.
So we again want to say thank you and welcome to the city of Shreveport.
Thank you.
Mayor Tyler, do you have any comments you'd like to make to them?
Yes, sir, absolutely. We're always excited to have new businesses and new entrepreneurs to come to our city. So thank you for being here, and please call upon us if we can help in any way.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you,
you so much both for coming and visiting with us today.
Thank you, Chairman Cleary.
Yes, sir. Okay, is there any other council member at this time that would like to be recognized? Councilman Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to say that we had another wonderful week and weekend in the city of Shreveport. Red River Revel Film Prize. There were 2 5K runs, a triathlon, and a bike tour among just some of the events that were going on this weekend. So I think that those days of, what do I do in Shreveport? We are, as we've said before, sometimes there's too many choices to do everything. But certainly to the Red River Revel and Gregory Kallenberg and his team at the Film Prize, growing that and bringing people into downtown, they are certainly to be congratulated.
Did you forget Mr. Jenkins' event?
I mean, that really hurt, because I was going to point that out. I mean, rappelling down buildings is not an everyday event in Shreveport.
I was going to give you that limelight.
No. I will say there were 53 people, I believe, that rappelled down the Beck building in support of the Fuller Center. We had one octogenarian, which was quite impressive, a woman I go to church with, Joanne Siegler, who many of you know.
85 years old, right?
She was one of the rappellers, and I was with her when she was at the top, and I got over any fear that I had just looking over at her and thought, boy, there's really no question I better be going over the edge. So it was impressive, and a great group that was out there, both supporting the Fuller Center's efforts and just, between the film prize and everything else going downtown, it was a great weekend.
Who went first, and was there any hesitation?
I will tell you that our own Liz Swain went early in the morning. I don't know who was actually first. A few people went Friday.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I'd also like to make an announcement that this evening at 5 o'clock, the Taste of Southern Hills will launch, and I hope that many people will be able to come by and see all the vendors, and the departments are going to be there with the city and fire, police, street, our recycling, all those of you that are listening by television today. Be sure that you get by and see those departments if you have any questions at that time. Is there any other council member at this time that'd like to recognize any guests?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any guests to recognize, but I would like to acknowledge our Fire Chief Wolverton, who was the guest speaker today at the North Shreveport Business Association. I wanted to congratulate him on his speech and presentation. I thought he brought very positive attention to his work and the achievement of the Shreveport Fire Department over the last 2 years under his tenure. So congratulations. Thank you, Chief, for that wonderful, outstanding presentation you did this afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mayor Tyler.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the council, and to our publics. We have several announcements today. The new recycling schedule began this week with Republic Services, where they began every other week pickup of recyclables. The pickup day of the week will not change. For detailed information on the new schedule, please check out recycling changes at www.shreveport.la.gov. Let me do that again, www.shreveport.la.gov, or call Republic Services at 318-213-5050. Our next announcement, this week is Fire Prevention Week, and our Shreveport Fire Department will install free smoke alarms and conduct free home inspections. Just call 673-6740. Last week, SFD shared fire safety tips with about 1,200 school children for Sparky Day. That's always a great event. Tomorrow, another announcement, we will have a ribbon cutting at Harry Perry Park for the reopening of the community center. Everyone is invited to attend the event, which will be held at 4 p.m. at the center, located at 4300 Ledbetter Street. That's 4300 Ledbetter Street. And I did send council members, I think this morning, a copy of the press release. Next announcement, I'd like to thank the neighborhoods that took time to participate in National Night Out last week to support the annual community building campaign that fosters the type of police-community partnerships that is essential to make our neighborhoods safer places to live. Next, last week we also had the Ford Travel Motorcade Club in our great city with more than 80 coaches on the site at the fairgrounds and about 160 people from across the country. and we were able to go there and welcome all of those folks to our city. Next, we also had the pleasure to have the Site Selectors Guild in our city last week, thanks to NLEP and some other partners. They were here to see all that we have to offer potential business and industry, particularly Fortune 500 companies. Next, council members, I want to invite you to mark your calendars for this year's upcoming Mayor's Prayer Breakfast to be held at 7 a.m. on November 9th at the Boulder Civic Center. And we will remind you in the coming days about that event. As you know, this past year, we did it here in Shreveport at the Shreveport Convention Center. So we'll be going across the river to fellowship over there with Mayor Walker and his constituents. Our next announcement, we continue to provide our citizens and visitors with a lot to do for entertainment. Since we last met, we've had many other events in our city, and I think Councilman Corbin has already mentioned a number of those: Red River Revel, Film Prize, National Night Out, and the list goes on and on. And just as a reminder, we have a lot to offer our citizens here in Shreveport, and we say to our citizens and visitors, please come and fellowship, have a good time, visit, and play here in Shreveport. And at this time, Mr. Chairman and council members, I'd like to invite Mrs. Sharika Jones to come and give us an overview of the 2018 executive budget that you all received earlier. At this time, Ms. Field, will you, Ms. Field Jones. The merit name is Jones. Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, council members. This is the executive budget overview, and at this time we're going to provide a summarized overview of the budget. And during this presentation, I'm going to walk through all of the major components and the changes in the budget in general. I'll look at some of the major changes and detail each within the departments and within each fund. And there's this calendar here that shows the detailed department review sessions that are scheduled in November. And we will use these 3 days to go through a detailed review with the department heads and their staff. We will start with a partial day on Friday. We'll start with the smaller budgets, and then Saturday we'll continue, and then with some of the other larger budgets on Sunday afternoon. Then we have a public hearing that's scheduled for Tuesday, November the 14th, and then budget adoption, according to the charter, should be held prior to December the 15th. So the 2018 budget was prepared with the administration's overall objectives in mind, and those are listed here. Some of the priorities are to maintain fiscal transparency, to continue to sustain the funding of services consistent with the strategic plan, to continue to find ways to operate more efficiently, and then also to provide our employees with competitive pay, and then also being able to attract and retain a high-quality workforce. And I will outline some of those objectives and how we look to achieve those within 2018. I'm going to start with the general fund, and this houses the primary functions of the city services. And this is a picture that basically shows the allocation of revenue that's collected by the general fund. On the next slide, we'll break down the actual dollar amounts of each section. Between sales taxes, property taxes, and assessments accounts for almost 71% of total general fund revenue. 14% comes from charges and fines, which includes licensings, permits, and external and internal service charges, fees paid to the city, etc. 10% of the miscellaneous revenue includes transfers in for services to water and sewer, transfers from other funds. It also reflects equipment package proceeds, EMS receipts, and other small miscellaneous items. The projected beginning fund balance at the start of 2018 accounts for 5% of the total general fund revenue. This page accounts for the detailed changes between 2018 and 2017 for each revenue section. Taxes and assessments include sales taxes, property taxes, and assessments for franchise fees that we receive from our utilities. The taxes and assessments, it is showing an increase primarily due to the increased performance of sales taxes, which accounts for 53% of general fund revenue. So over the last 6 months, sales tax receipts have seen an average that has been higher than the years 2014 and 15 collections. These are 2 years that revenue totaled in excess of $119 million. So the sales tax projection that is budgeted is $117 million, and this is a conservative estimate that's a decrease slightly from the 2017 budget. This assumes that sales taxes will continue to remain stable throughout the year, and if collections remain the same as it was in 2016 for the rest of this year, we will meet the city's 2017 ending estimate of $117.5 million. Property taxes to the general fund total $28 million. This assumes that the millage rate of 18.16 mils is unchanged and ad valorem revenue is unchanged. Assessments of $11 million, that comes from franchise fees, and the city's local share of state taxes is unchanged also. License and permits is mostly unchanged. External service charges, unchanged. Internal service charges shows a slight increase due to the accounting for water and sewer payment to engineering for salaries for the consent decree. Fines and forfeitures show a slight decrease, and that is a fluctuation in the court and marshal's anticipated revenue for fines. Intergovernmental revenue is relatively flat, and then we have miscellaneous revenue shows a $2.7 million increase. This is primarily due to the increase in EMS service fees. The city expects to net $12 million in EMS revenue this year, and this is $6 million more than what was budgeted. So in 2018, the general fund will receive $0 from the street special revenue fund. And the funds that are transferred primarily, typically to public works for streets, will remain in the street special revenue fund. And the streets fund will have a reserve to be able to do additional projects in 2018. And I'll detail that more later when I go to a slide dedicated to streets. The transfer to the Riverfront Fund is decreased by $2.2 million. So we're going from $9.2 million in 2017 to a budget of $7 million for next year. The certificate of indebtedness line item that you see there reflects the proceeds of an equipment package, and we have budgeted $1 million for police and $600,000 for fire, and I'll detail that later also. So this slide shows a picture of the allocations of general fund expenditures. We have personnel services, which attributes to 68%. Supplies, contracts, and other charges account for 19%. Equipment, notes payable, and transfers total 11%. Those transfers include those to Sportran, retained risk, and other fund subsidies, none which have changed for 2018. And then we have an operating reserve projected at $4.7 million, which is 2% of general fund expenditures. This is a listing of the categories within the general fund expenditures. It shows the change between what is budgeted to what was budgeted for this year compared to next year. Major personnel services changes include the following. First, we have a 5% pay increase that is budgeted for all civil service and non-civil service employees that earn up to $75,000 per year. So each department has found ways to reallocate funds, and they have held back vacancies which were unfunded to provide for the pay increase. Personnel services also includes a 3% increase for active employees' health insurance. It also includes the city's contribution to retirement, which is going to increase by 2% for ERS. Materials and supplies and contractual services, they have decreased again. This equates to over $4 million that has been decreased since 2015 in these line items. Improvements, the $1.2 million decrease accounts for $312,000 that was removed from the budget, which was a one-time proceeds for SPAR's equipment package in 2017 that was approved. And then also $196,000 to remove one-time proceeds that went for fire department's equipment package. And then again, as I mentioned, $750,000 was moved to the street special revenue fund to be able to fund street overlay. Changes in notes payable are due to savings from notes that have rolled off. And then it also accounts for the addition of notes for new equipment packages that were added in 2016. Transfers from the general fund reflect a contribution to risk of $6.9 million, which is unchanged. Sports ran of $6.5 million, which is unchanged. It moves the one-time $300,000 that was added in 2017 for Cargill's parking lot. And it also increases the matching funds that will be required to be able to receive the increase in EMS revenue. So total expenditures, including the 5% pay increase to employees, represents a net decrease of $1.2 million over 2017. Ending operating reserves, again, represents 2% of general fund expenditures. So in general, the general fund includes a 3% increase in health care. This, however, resulted in a $580,000 decrease in the budget, and this is due to efficiencies from unfunding vacancies, and then there are also fewer users and plan savings. The city's contribution to employment, to the employee retirement system, that total increase is $570,000. And this will take the city's contribution from 22% to 24%. The police retirement system has a decrease of $406,000 for 2018, and the firefighters retirement system has an increase of $667,000. These are the proposed improvements that are in the 2018 budget. $1 million for equipment for the police department, specifically to purchase 25 vehicles. And this will total $6 million that has been invested in police equipment since 2016. For the fire department, the city plans to purchase a ladder truck, which the total cost is just under $1 million. So $600,000 of that will come from an equipment package proceeds, and then $354,000 will come from an insurance claim. Again, each department has adhered to restricted hiring. They have continued to find efficiencies per the mayor's continual directive. And furthermore, for 2018, the departments have unfunded vacancies, and they've utilized other cost-saving measures to provide a pay increase to employees without increasing the budget. So the departments have budgeted to provide the city employees earning under $75,000 with a 5% increase, which will cost $3.9 million to the general fund. For police and fire, this includes a base pay increase of 3%, and then a customary longevity of 2%, which will be provided to all civil service employees. The total amount of the increase for police and fire is 5%. This chart is extracted from the budget book that we customarily see that shows the flow of revenue and expenditures in the general fund from year to year. It starts with our most recent audited fund balance of $1.6 million. We expect to add $10 million to fund balance by the end of 2017. This is primarily due to the increase in EMS revenue. Estimated reserves are projected at $4.7 million. This chart shows the allocation of each department's budget within the general fund. We have 51% going to public safety, 8% to SPAR, 15% to public works, and then 11% allocated among the smaller general fund departments, such as legal, property standards, HR, IT, etc. I'm going to go through each department's budget individually just to show the difference from year to year. This is the executive office budget, which is unchanged. The legal department budget is unchanged. Property standards budget is unchanged. It remains at $3.5 million. Human resources department budget remains at $751,000. IT's budget has decreased to $3.5 million. This takes out the $75,000 that was budgeted for council chamber upgrades. SPAR's budget is unchanged. It remains at $17 million. The finance department budget is increased to $3.6 million, and this is due to an approved personnel in the purchasing department to work specifically with consent decree work on behalf of water and sewer. General government, this budget is an accounting section that basically hires the various payments and receipts to the general fund that are not specific to a certain department. And it also includes our transfers in and out to and from other funds. This budget has decreased by $1.2 million. It includes the increase in health insurance for retirees. It removes the transfer from streets. It accounts for the $2 million decrease in Riverfront Fund. The transfers to other funds are unchanged, and it continues to fund civic appropriations and public agency appropriations. The police department budget has an increase of $1.2 million. It includes a pay increase totaling $1.5 million. It includes the $1 million equipment package. The payment on this equipment package will begin in 2019. And the police department makes a final payment of $545,000 on an equipment that was purchased in 2012. So ultimately, the police department will have a net decrease in their notes payables for 2018. The police department budget also includes $300,000 in overtime pay, and this is $100,000 more than what is initially budgeted for 2017. So the $150,000 amendment is maintained, and then it's $100,000 more over that amount.
Over the amount after the increase?
After the increase, correct. The police department budget also restores the clothing allowance that was reduced in 2014. So the per member allowance will go from $200 per member to $400 per member. The same for the fire department, that the clothing allowance will increase from $200 per member to $400. This clothing allowance budget was also decreased in 2014. The pay increase total for the fire department is $1.3 million. The ladder truck replacement is accounted for, and because the fire department has an equipment package payment that is rolling off this year, they have an actual net decrease in notes payable for 2018. Engineering and environmental's budget is increased slightly, and this is funds specifically request for Cross Lake herbiciding for Salvinia spraying. The Public Works budget is decreased by $1.8 million. This is due to unfunding vacancies primarily, and then also moving the $750,000 for asphalt overlay to the street special revenue fund. The City Council budget has a slight decrease just to the fact that furnishings were purchased in 2017. The City Court submitted a budget of $3.6 million. They will supplement their budget again for 2018. The city's portion is unchanged and will remain at $3.4 million. The city's marshal's budget total is $2.1 million, and the city's portion will remain at $1.5 million. We're going to go to the internal service fund. The city has one retained risk fund budget, and this serves as the city's self-insurance against all of activities for the city that involves property damage, workers' compensation, general liability claims, and auto liability. This fund was set up to comply with government accounting standards. So for 2018, the risk budget revenue is $10.1 million, and in expenditures and current year claims total $10.1 million. The general fund contribution of $6.9 million is unchanged.
You can back to that slide you just said. Thank you.
Sure. The Riverfront Development Fund budget is expected to have a beginning fund balance of $418,000. Year-to-date gaming revenues are trailing approximately 4% below 2016. So the gaming receipts budget, we decreased it by 5% compared to 2017. There's a transfer of $7 million to the general fund that is accounted for, and the neighborhood investment program is unchanged at $125,000. Civic appropriations to organizations to be determined by the council is still budgeted at $150,000. The Street Special Revenue Fund budget is $8.2 million. Again, there is $0 transferred to the general fund. In 2017, this year, there was a $5.3 million transfer for roadway improvements, and revenue to the fund is continuing budgeted at $6.8 million. A reserves total of about $7.5 million will provide for additional street improvements in 2018. The community development budget is slightly decreased. For 2018, the city's fund match to the community development budget is unchanged. It will remain at $890,000. The transfer for summer jobs will remain at $100,000. The grants budget has a $2.2 million decrease. This is primarily because of the changes in the grant periods for the fire department. The personnel grant that was awarded in 2018 reaches its end in January of 2018. I'm sorry, it was awarded in 2016, and the period ends in 2018. That's a $1.3 million decrease, and then also a $1.2 million grant for fire equipment has been expensed. So in total, the fire grants total $11,000, police grants total $2.9 million, and environmental grants total $1.2 million. The grants that are awarded to Sportran and airports are shown in their respective capital budgets, and there's not accounted for in this fund. The MPC budget is $1.6 million, and the subsidy to the general fund, according to the budget that was submitted, is unchanged. The redevelopment agency fund balance continues to roll forward at $4,000. The downtown entertainment budget is $795,000, and this is primarily due to a change in the sales tax projection. Under the enterprise funds, the water and sewage budget is $115 million. And this primarily is a change due to the fund balance. There's an increase in sewer charges to fund consent decree totaling $4.5 million for 2018. The airport's budget is $24 million. And this includes operating reserves of $8.7 million. The airport's grants are reflected in its capital budget. Sports train budget is relatively unchanged. The subsidy from the general fund is unchanged. And again, sports train grants are reflected in the capital budget. Golf's budget is $1.5 million. The general fund subsidy of $87,000 is the same from 2017, and this accounts for an operating reserve of $41,000. The downtown parking budget has increased to $1.2 million, and this is basically due to an unspent roll forward of prior year fund balances. The convention center budget is $1.7 million. This is the transfer also that will come from the riverfront to cover the convention center's operations over their revenue. The hotel enterprise fund budget accounts for the city's cumulative contributions to the hotel debt service. And the hotel enterprise fund budget has improved by $1.2 million, primarily due to $1.5 million of net revenue contribution that the city has received for debt service from the hotel. This was an increase from what was initially budgeted. So hotel operations continue to remain stable. They have a projection that they will bring in $11 million in revenue and $9.8 million in expenditures. Per their contract, they will continue to hold back 5% for future capital replacements. The debt service fund budget has decreased to $84 million, and this is primarily due to a change in fund balance due to the payment on general obligation bonds. The reserves total is approximately $51 million compared to $56 million in 2017. In the capital improvements budget, we're showing here an allocation of all of the capital programs, sewer and water accompanying 66% of the capital projects, 12% is between streets and drainage, 7% for airports, and 15% to the other programs. So there's mostly unchanged budgets within each program. In recreation, we have a decrease in a choice neighborhood grant. In airports and in sports trend, we have increases in grant receipts, which accounts for the increase in their capital budgets. Okay, and this is just an overview of all of the budgets and all of the funds. And this concludes the overview. And I'll take any questions if there are any at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Jones. If there are questions about the overview, I think we mentioned yesterday that, we'll be having those work sessions. And I think we worked with the council office, with the council, to set those times for us to do the individual department budgets. And but if you have a question about the overview today, we'll be glad to entertain those.
Well, I hate that there's an opportunity to ask a question about a budget item, so I will certainly take it.
Okay?
Mr. Chair, is it okay with you? The slide 2, I think it has an $11 million under 2018. Was that the rollover from 2017's budget? That's the beginning fund balance in 2018?
Yeah, that's the end of year 17 fund balance.
Okay.
So that's correct.
Okay. Because I was curious to know how we figured that number growing, but I got that answer. Okay. On when we talked about giving raises to employees, and one of the ways we were able to do that is by unfunding some gapped positions. Now, we did not do that, or we did do that for the police department?
We did not do that for the police department.
I didn't think we did, but
No, we did
the
not.
way the statement came up, and I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, that we weren't using that.
No. And
Okay.
let me clarify, Councilman Jenkins, these were non-critical positions that we did the year-long freeze. In fact, we've been hiring police officers, as many as we can find and recruit, that met the qualifications, and we continue those efforts. And we've shown significant growth in the number over the last 2 to 3 classes, and we're predicting in February, I believe, that we're going to have another probably 40 recruits. But all of them don't make it. They have to qualify. But that does not include fire and police. Those we consider critical positions.
Okay, just want to make that
I'm
clear
glad you
for
asked
the
that, so
record,
we can
because we
have
did
that.
start that statement, and I'm like, well, I don't think we really did that for police.
Non-critical positions.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the last thing, when on the budgets that we say stayed the same, when we have that 3% health contribution equivalent, is that going into the fund so it doesn't show up at the personnel level in terms of the cost of those personnel? Because in the past, every department, even when they stay with the department, they went up whatever percent as a function of either retirement or health care costs, but predominantly health care costs. But in this case, they weren't characterized that way?
You'll see, again, it was kind of an interesting year with health insurance, because even though the mayor put forward a 3% increase in everyone's premium that the city is paying, there was an overall decrease in what we're funding compared to last year, because there was a fewer number of employees who were listed in the plan, and by eliminating some of the vacant positions that were previously funded with some of those $10,000 a piece contributions that the city puts in there every year for employees. But you'll still see that number in there reflected of what's going to be needed in 2018 for that specific department. So it may be a decreased number, or it may be an increased number if they've had additional personnel.
But when we see those budgets staying the same at a department head level, that's
Right.
taken into account somewhere or another in that already.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'd just like to say, generally, the budget does show a lot of really good goals being met, so I can tell that y'all were focused in doing that. It's always, the criticism will always come in the details. So, we have to look and see at what was reduced in order to achieve that. But it was a great overview. It looks like that is somewhat clear as to where y'all, found the efficiencies to do that. And, certainly want to commend your efforts in staying focused to what is the, sort of the general concern of the public, I think that we have addressed, that a number of those issues have been addressed, and look forward to having a chance to explore it in further detail.
Right.
And that even goes to, particularly in the in the Public Works budget, I think it was the one where we're funding the additional Salvinia. That's a direct recommendation from the infrastructure report that to see that reflected in the budget is encouraging, and look forward to digging down in those details a little bit further.
Thank you so much. Just to address what Councilman Jefferson said, I want to thank you for those comments. This is the second year we've been able to look for efficiencies. But I do want to say that our department heads and our employees and the leadership have really done a great job in looking for those efficiencies while maintaining those services to citizens. So I need to say thank you to them. They've worked extremely hard to do that. Consequently, a lot of our employees are doing more. And so we were able to take that year-long freeze of not hiring for those non-critical positions and be able to try to show appreciation to the employees who have taken on the extra duty of providing those services. And so I just need to say thank you to them, because they have really, we've given them the charge. I've given them the charge, and I think they've met it. And also our outlook, financial outlook with our sales tax revenues is much better going forward. We noticed this year we were bringing in about 300,000 more per month over what we brought in last year. Last year it was pretty gloom, but we can see the rebounding. And so, but I did say to staff, I said to my CAO and Sharika and the department heads, we will continue to forecast in a very conservative manner. So I didn't let them forecast anymore, even though we are showing that the economy is coming back. We'd rather not forecast too much, and at the end, we hope that we can show where the efficiencies are really working, and that we're trying to make sure that we are being financially, sound here in Shreveport, and that we're trying to continue those efforts at the same time, provide the quality services, and continue to do even better. Thank you.
Councilman Bowman. And we can just, I do want to discuss it later on the police increase, but on their uniform purchase or whatever, it was decreased in 14 to 200?
Before I came aboard, yeah. It was cut in half. Actually, they used to get 400 from what I was told.
Yes, ma'am.
And they reduced it to 200.
Both fire and police.
Both fire and police. And we did get, when I came aboard, there was some concern from employees from both of those departments. So we were trying to restore what had been taken.
Okay. And well, we can discuss that during I want to talk about the increase that they raised. That's true. Absolutely. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, Councilman Corbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we add this summary to the website as well?
Certainly.
I think it would be very informational.
Yeah, let me make a comment, Mr. Chairman. And it seemed to be a very reasonable attempt to forecast next year, Mayor. Without looking at the actual revenue that was generated through the various departments and maintaining some of the departments without increases, and then projecting a 5% increase, obviously put a lot of thought and work into that. Are you by presenting such a sound proposal, are you anticipating that last year's budget for this year is going to be accomplished, or is there going to be any type of shortfall that will somewhat compromise what we're projecting for next year? In other words, would there be a surplus that would be taken over projection-wise?
If I understand your question, we feel like there will be a surplus. There will not. We won't be compromising anything because we are projecting on a very conservative basis. We have seen, as I've said, an increase in our revenues, and but we did not show that in the forecast because we would rather not estimate than to underestimate. When I came in, there was an underestimation, and then in 2016, the bottom fell out, and we just each month we were not bringing in what was projected. So we think we're going to have surplus, but we don't know that. We'll have a better idea as we get into 2018.
But at this stage, it looks positive.
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay. And my other question is, and we probably get into this at our work sessions, legal went unchanged. The city attorney's office and the legal department. And I was surprised about that because it appears that there are several litigations that seem to be forthcoming, and you feel that what is proposed will accommodate that challenge.
I think there could be later on some increase, but I'm going to ask City Attorney Bradford if he could respond.
Yes, sir. The city attorney's budget only comprises our regular full-time and part-time staff. Our litigation expenses are expended through the retained risk fund, so that is a different budget item. I think that item has been reflective of those considerations and our discussions with the auditor as well as the actuary this year.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And that retained risk budget is always one that, it's a little bit difficult to follow if you're not accustomed to it. But it looked well presented, and look forward to the chance to ask a few questions about it because it's always, just as a different type of accounting than what many of us are accustomed to. Certainly.
Can I ask one other question, Mayor? And as we all know that several months ago it was proposed that we would do a project that will sort of include weaning ourselves away from a lot of the riverfront obligations and how we utilize that in our general fund. I saw no attempt to try to start weaning ourselves so that we could be in a position to do capital projects within the downtown community from that fund.
I'm going to ask CEO Crawford, and let me make one statement before I ask him to respond, because I do want him to respond. There were several attempts, and I heard the council when we worked last year through this and the year before that. We have to start with many steps, baby steps. This is the first budget we've presented where we didn't use any of the special street revenue fund to transfer into general fund. Right. So that's one fund that we are now using just for what it's intended. And when I came in, that was not the case. And I think the people who were here can say that. So we're going to be working on these as revenues are generated. That's why it's important for us to really work hard to jumpstart our economy. And we feel like the economy is coming back. But it's going to take us some baby steps. It's going to take me more than 2 years and 9 months to get all these funds where they need to be. But this is the first budget where we did not take any of the street special revenue fund. So,
thank you, Mayor. Councilman, one of the things that the mayor directed, and she just spoke to it a while ago, was the conservative nature of her budget in her estimates. If we continue on the same trend as we are currently with sales tax and bring in the same dismal amounts we brought in 2016, if you remember about in August of 2016, that's when the sales taxes really dropped because of oil and gas. If we bring in those same numbers, we'll hit 17.5 this year. If we bring in, as the mayor said, the $300,000 over that we've hit for the last 6 months, 5 out of the last 6 months, $300,000 over there, we'll actually hit the $18,400,000 mark that we projected in there. but we didn't put that in the budget. So if that happens, as the mayor said, that's going to be a surplus. The EMS revenue that's been placed in there, even though we saw a $5 million surplus this year in projected revenue of some $12 million over the $7 million that was budgeted, we only budgeted $9.8 million for EMS revenue next year. That's the same number that we actually collected in 2016, plus the $600,000 extra that this mayor presented and this council approved to increasing the EMS fees. And so if that rate comes in higher, or even doing what it did this year, you could be looking at another $4 or $5 million that's not even in this budget to go toward that operating reserve. Having said that, and getting to your specific question about the riverfront, we're actually putting $2 million less in the riverfront, from riverfront this year, into the general fund. Now, albeit it's not there to put in the general fund, but it is $2 million less, and we are holding back a little bit more money for economic development opportunities. There's another $100,000 that the mayor has directed to be left in there for a potential economic development opportunity that comes forward. But one of the questions that we have to ask ourselves is, do we leave that extra $2 or $3 million in the operating reserve of the riverfront fund, or do we transfer it to the general fund where we can put it in the operating reserves and show it for some potential future bond rating and those types of things? It just makes sense at this point in time to have that money sitting in the operating reserves, where if it is needed, it can be appropriated by the mayor and this council to be used towards something rather than leaving it in the riverfront. So we are making those attempts, as the mayor said, to be able to do that. And I think as we get down in the budget and we delve a little bit further, I think you'll see the extraordinary steps that we've taken to be able to demonstrate that.
Very good response. And let me just say that it's logical, but I think at the same time we want to be conscious of the fact that we don't obligate it in a way that we would expend it and not at least have a conscience that that we're not trying to pursue what was established years ago, but before our tenure here. But thank you for those responses. I think it was very well articulated. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Could I just say, as a matter of semantics, I heard several people in this discussion use the term surplus, and I would argue that until we get above that 7% recommended operating reserve, it's not really a surplus. It's more of a capital of an operating reserve balance, which, in order to really meet that national standard goal, we're still a ways from that. So
agreed.
Let's not think of it as extra money. It's getting us to where we need to be. So.
Thank you, Councilman.
One more thing. Mayor, one more thing from City Attorney Bradford on when he was speaking about the retained risk, and can you elaborate a little bit more on the amount of litigation and so forth?
Sure. Yeah, and I think it speaks to what Councilman Bradford was saying. Exactly. The amount of litigation, to be clear, is actually decreasing. We're seeing a trend down. I think our office does a good job of claim management on the front end. We see fewer lawsuits. I think in 2014, the average amount of money we paid to hired outside counsel was about $1.9 million. Last year, it tracked at about $964,000, so we were down nearly $1 million in what we were paying out. And so that fund is separate from our regular operating budget, but that's why when we discuss it in our detailed meetings, you'll see a trend down and continue path that way.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mayor,
yes, sir, that's it. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's move to reports. Any questions from the council for reports? I see none. Public hearing, none. Mrs. Thompson, is there any legislation to be added today?
Mr. Chairman, there are two items on your agenda, e-agenda. One is Resolution 175, authorizing the mayor to waive the background check fees for high school students enrolled in the Nursing Assistance Program at the Caddo Career and Technology Center. And the other is Ordinance 124, adopting the 2018 Downtown Development Authority budget. So those two items are on your agenda, and they can be considered to be added at this time.
What say you?
Oh, so move to.
Mr. Chairman,
You got to ask after if there's no objections from tonight.
may want to inquire as to whether or not any.
Is there any objection to adding these to the agenda?
Would anyone like to speak in favor?
Would anyone like to speak for or against? And the chair sees none.
That being said, I move.
Second. Okay, the chair hears Councilman Everson's motion and second by Councilman Jenkins. Is there any discussion? Please vote.
Going through the rigors.
And the motion. We have following request to speak. Vice Chair will handle those.
Jeez. All right. Kenneth Creth. State your name and address for the record, please. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Kenneth Kraft, 157 Archer.
On the budget? No, I asked him what item you want to speak on. He just told me.
104 through 121, 18 budgetary ordinances for 18. Good job, young lady. I understand it. Michael, I was going to ask put an executive budget online, but it's already been agreed to, so that covers it. 2 minor points. The general fund operating reserve was very dear to me. It's something I recommended to get higher in April of 1980. We at one point got 8%. We peaked at 8%. Now we're down, but Councilman Everson, good point. Until we get to 15 million, 7% of the general fund, there's no surplus. This is really enough money to run the city's ship of state for about 10 days. If you look at a year and you look at the reserve as the numerator and the general fund as the denominator. The second point would be, if y'all wanted to, if there were a risk of losing our bond rating again, and I don't think there is, you could budget for next year sales taxes of 1.2 million more, $1 million more, and put all of it in the operating budget reserve. But the debit would equal the credit. You wouldn't have gained anything, but only if there's a real risk of having the bond rating downgraded, and I don't think there is. If it comes in higher than we expect, so much good. August, as y'all know, was up 7%, and a majority of the merchants with whom I spoke said they did better in September this year than they did in September of last year. Of course, we won't know that until October 20. So one thing the mayor left out when she welcomed visitors to come here and have a good time, and I'm sure she meant to say and spend a lot of money.
Thank you, sir.
That's it, sir.
Okay, that concludes public comments. We'll move to, we have no executive appointments to be considered today. There are no items on the consent agenda for introduction. Mr. Thompson, please continue.
Mr. Chairman, we have the following items on the consent agenda for adoption. These are resolutions 170, 171, 172, and 173. A motion to adopt the consent agenda would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Not quite sure who the second one.
Me, I'll call them, it don't matter.
Motion by Councilman Everson, second by Councilman Bowman. Is there any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, we're now under regular regular agenda legislation, resolutions on second reading and final passage. Resolution 158 authorizes the mayor to enter into a lease agreement with Southern University at Shreveport for operation of the Marlin Street Kitchen Incubator Community Garden.
So moved.
Kitchen.
Motion by Councilman Everson, second by Councilman
But
Bowman.
just as a point of record, did you say 158? I believe
159.
159. Yeah.
Good ear, good ear. Okay,
Still got
no
some-
discussion?
Some working hearing. That's
Please
wonderful.
vote.
Second by Bradford.
Motion carries.
Resolution 164 authorizes the mayor to execute an acceptance of act of donation between the city and Home Federal Bank for the private sewer improvements for Home Federal Bank on Piermont Road.
So moved.
Second.
That's a motion by Councilman Jenkins and second by Councilman Bowman. Is there any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes.
Resolution 165 authorizes the mayor to execute an acceptance of active donation between the city and Rosenblatt Construction for the Fern Avenue Sewer Main Extension and related facilities.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Jenkins, second by Councilman Bowman. Is there any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes.
Resolution 166 authorizes the mayor to execute an acceptance of act of donation between the city and Shreveport Development Corporation for the private sanitary sewer and water main extensions and related facilities to serve Orleans Court and 12 Oaks.
So moved.
Councilman Corbin, I second. And Councilman Jenkins seconds it. Chair, can you get a chance on that one? Any discussion? Please vote.
So slow over there, I wouldn't spend any more valuable time here.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, we have one item that was added on that can be voted at this time. It's Resolution 175. It authorizes the mayor to waive the background check fees for high school students.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Bradford and second by Councilman Morton. Any discussion? Please vote.
Are we voting on the added item?
175.
Added item? The background check.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, we're now at the introduction of resolutions not to be adopted prior to October the 24th. We have one. Resolution 174 approves the 2018 Downtown Development Authority Program of Work.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Everson, second by Councilman Bowman. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes.
We're now at the introduction of ordinances. Ordinance 121 amends Section 39-10 of Article 2 of Chapter 39, Human Relations of the City of Shreveport, Code of Ordinances. Ordinance 122. Ordinance 123 changes the name of Westwood Circle to Larry Brandon III Circle. Mr. Chairman, on Ordinance 123, you may want to table that after it's been introduced.
So moved for introduction.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes. Now motion to table.
Move to table ordinance 123.
Second. Second by Councilman Corbin.
And Art, should I also
Until January the 9th.
till January 9th? Okay.
Table January 9th. Any discussion? Please vote.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I just want to be clear, and we spoke on it yesterday. At first, anybody have any idea how many houses?
No.
There's no houses on this circle?
Yeah, it's in the writing.
There's no one that sits back in the.
There's no
But
residences.
it's on the main street. It's not in the circle.
Oh.
It's only the property that he owns, and then the other two face other streets.
Oh, okay, okay.
Please vote. Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, we're now under the 2018 budget ordinances to be adopted no later than December the 15th, 2017. Ordinance 104 adopts the 2018 Capital Projects Fund budget. Ordinance 105 adopts the 2018 Riverfront Development Fund budget. Ordinance 106 adopts the 2018 General Fund budget. Ordinance 107 adopts the 2018 Retained Risk Fund budget. Ordinance 108 adopts the 2018 Metropolitan Planning Commission Fund budget. Ordinance 108 adopts the 2018 Community Development Special Revenue 109 Fund budget. Ordinance 110 adopts the 2018 Grant Special Revenue Fund budget. Ordinance 111 adopts the 2018 Shreveport Redevelopment Agency Special Revenue Fund budget. Ordinance 112 adopts the 2018 Downtown Entertainment Economic Development Special Revenue Fund budget. Ordinance 113 adopts the 2018 Golf Enterprise Fund budget. Ordinance 114 adopts the 2018 Airport Enterprise Fund budget. Ordinance 115 adopts the 2018 Water and Sewer Fund budget. Ordinance 118 adopts the 2018 budget funding contractual services by Sportran. 116. 117 adopts the 2018 Downtown Parking Enterprise Fund budget. Ordinance 118 adopts the 2018 Convention Center Enterprise Fund budget. Ordinance 119 adopts the 2018 Convention Center Hotel Enterprise Fund budget. Ordinance 120 adopts the 2018 Debt Service Fund budget. Ordinance 121 adopts the 2018 Street Special Revenue Fund budget. And the one that was added, Ordinance 124, adopts the 2018 Downtown Development Authority Fund budget.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Is there a motion to introduce these ordinances? Motion by Councilman Corbin and second by Councilman Bradford. Any discussion? Please vote.
You want to table them?
You want us to table everything but the one that we added?
No, that one too.
All okay.
Okay, so motion to table 104 through 120, ordinance, should it say them individually? Just 104 through 124?
Through 121 and 124.
Okay, through 121 and 124.
Second by Councilman Corbin. Any discussion? Please vote.
Keep dreaming.
And that motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, we're now in the ordinances on second reading and final passage. Ordinance 99 declares the city's interest in certain vacant lots as surplus, and our intention to donate certain vacant lots required by community development.
Second by Councilman Bradford. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passed.
Ordinance 100 amends sections in Chapter 10, alcoholic beverages of the City of Shreveport.
I'd like to move to adopt amendment number 1.
Second.
Second by Councilman Corbin.
Mr. Chairman,
Discussion?
and I thought, and I know we did discuss it and kind of gotten a clear understanding of why we needed to do this. Yet I got 2 phone calls today, and I think some other councilmen may have 1 or 2 as well. So I just want to ask our law enforcement, to personnel, do they see any negativity or where this would be in any way detrimental to any law enforcement processes? Can somebody answer us here regarding this amendment and how we would expand?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
You're familiar with this amendment?
If you will allow me, I'm going to call up our experts, our ABO folks, Agent Cisco and Agent Brian Wynn.
And Councilman Bradford, you may want to be specific about, at this point, we're voting on the amendment, and so the difference between the amendment and then the full ordinance.
Okay. Well, you can be inclusive, but I'm just trying to get your opinion regarding the expansion of hours on Sundays.
The original hours that we come up with were from 6 a.m. to 4 a.m. throughout the city of Shreveport. Makes it easier to enforce. Where we got the information from, we had several meetings with local business owners throughout the city, and that's where we come up with those hours.
And you comfortable with that?
6 to 4, yes, sir.
And let me state to you, Councilman, that was a process working with Attorney Bradford and his folks as well through that process, working hand in hand with them and looking at, I believe, what other entities do as well. Is that correct, Attorney Bradford?
Okay. And again, I wanted to hear it from law enforcement because there was some anxieties in regards to this amendment as well as the overall adoption of the new ordinance. And with your input in some recommendations, and you feel that we can adjust to this in a very good way for the public. I just want to be clear when I vote for it.
And what I would tell you from a law enforcement perspective, from the police department end of the thing, we are going to, with whatever this body, the city attorney's office, the mayor, the CAO, ultimately make a determination to move forward with, we're going to position ourselves so as to be able to enforce the laws that are set forth for us.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And if I could, I should echo a thanks to both the police department and the city attorney's office they put in a lot of work on this. Now, this amendment, I think, is something that they've taken a neutral position on. It was in response to some additional requests from downtown property owners. But the original ordinance that was proposed, they put in a tremendous amount of work on, and we're very appreciative of what they've done to kind of look at what other cities are doing, look at what's successful, and make sure that we're staying up to date as they've done on other parts of Chapter 10 and as they're continuing to do. So we look forward to continued cooperation with them and additional suggestions.
Well, hopefully it will generate the revenue that some claim it will. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any other councilman? Let's vote.
On the amendment.
Amendment number 1. And that motion carries.
So moved as amended.
Second by Chairman Bowman. Any discussion? Let's vote. And that motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, Ordinance 103 amends various sections in the City of Shreveport's Unified Development Code, September 2017 version, and there is one amendment. The amendment removes the S and places a P in the appropriate column of the use matrix that is on Table 5-1 to show that a drive-through is a permitted use or a financial institution zone C1. And the amendment authorizes the City Council to send zoning ordinances back to the MPC for further consideration.
Motion to approve Amendment 1.
Motion and second by Councilman Jenkins. Any discussion? Please vote. And motion carries.
Motion to approve as amended.
Second. Second by Councilman Jenkins. Any discussion? Please vote.
Is that
Jenkins, J-E-N-K-I-N-S.
now? I want everybody to look over here. It says yes.
But it's still
in
telling him to
green.
vote, although he's made his selection.
I want to make witnesses here that I know how to do it.
Technical error.
Ordinance 89
Not on
is
the
a
use
zoning
part.
matter, case number C-72-17. It rezones property located on the northeast corner of Ellaby Road and Gulf Ridge Drive from RE Residential Estate District to C2 Coronel Commercial District. There may be a motion to suspend the rules for the purpose of considering ordinance number 89 today. Originally, there was a motion to continue it until October the 24th. So if you want to consider it today, you need to move to...
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules for the purpose of reconsidering ordinance number 89 today.
Second.
Okay, motion second been made. Any discussion?
And before we vote on that, I think I need to continue with my ordinance, not only to reconsider ordinance 89, but also add a new ordinance, 89A, that each of us have been provided a copy with, and at the same time introduce ordinance 89A while we are under suspension of rules.
So is that all under one motion?
Yes.
Okay.
And now any discussion? Very comprehensive. Thank you. Madam Clerk, you have all that? Let's vote.
I'm sure he'd come up with all this by himself in an office, so I'm really impressive, I tell you.
Wow.
We did get a motion copy of this with a briefing of how it works, but there's a lot of moving parts.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to send ordinance 89 back to the MPC to consider C1 zoning for the subject property, provided that ordinance number 103 is effective on the date that ordinance 89 is to be considered by the MPC.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Please vote.
Check.
And that motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I now make a motion that we add ordinance 89A to the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion?
You need to have ask.
Oh, yeah. That's got a poll. Anyone here would like to speak for or against? Chair hears none. Let's move forward then. Please vote. Motion carries.
And finally, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we now introduce recently added ordinance 89A.
Second.
Discussion? Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. This is a great exercise in problem solving.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I do want to thank Karen Strand of our office. She really helped sort through a very complicated issue.
Thank you, Karen.
And I have a request to speak.
And Councilman Jenkins has the floor to speak.
To say that we're pursuing a course of action that is not only relevant to this specific issue, but other issues citywide. I was called today by another developer specific to the same issue about drive-throughs and banks and C1. So I can tell you that this is definitely something that, in retrospect, is filling a need or an issue that needed to be resolved with the UDC when it was initially proposed. So it is not an isolated instance.
Malta.
So getting that Rubik's Cube back to solid sides is worth it for more than just this one
More than
case.
just this one.
I agree.
You ready, Mr. Chairman? We now in ordinance 101 is a zoning matter, case number C-59-17. It rezones property located on the north side of Kinney Road, 1,345 feet west of Linwood Avenue, from R1D, I-1, Urban One Family Residence District, Light Industry District, to R1D, PUD, Urban One Family Residence District, for a planned unit development.
Okay. Motion to have a second.
Second.
Oh, yeah.
Any discussion? Please vote.
I didn't know what your motion was going to be. I wanted to make sure.
Motion passed.
Ordinance 102 is also a zoning matter, case number C-76-17. It rezones property located on Astor Place between Briarcrest Street and McCanos Trail from C3 R1-7 General Commercial Single Family Residential District to R17 PUD Single Family Residential Plan Unit Development District.
Motion to amend.
Second.
Second by Councilman Brand. Discussion.
To amend?
Well, it says amending the official zoning map.
So adopting the ordinance that would amend it, yeah.
Adopt the ordinance.
Please vote. Passed.
Mr. Chairman, those are all of the items on the regular agenda. On the table agenda, there's been some discussion about removing resolution number 44 of 2017. I believe that it's no longer necessary because this property has been annexed into the city.
And I make a motion that we remove Resolution 44 of 2017 from our agenda.
Second.
Second by Councilman Bradford. Any discussion? Please vote.
Just doing my part to clean up before year end.
Yeah. And that approved. Passes.
Mr. Chairman, there are no appeals to be considered at this time.
Well, Mr. Thompson, are there any reports from officers, boards, or committees at this time?
Mr. Chairman, the Audit and Finance Committee has held 2 recent meetings, and I want to thank Councilman Everson for stepping in for me last week.
He done one heck of a job.
I thought I could make it, and realized that it would be better to pass the torch on that particular day. But we've received 2 audits, and then yesterday we received our report on the feasibility of bringing the MPC in as an internal city department. So I think everybody who attended those meetings and worked on that information, and I think that we will be scheduling some more meetings very soon.
Thank you, Councilman Corbett. Mr. Thompson, their clerk's report.
No, sir, I know that y'all wanted to get out early, so.
I have one for the clerk. Based on his recent reading of some of these PUD approvals, I would suggest his wife consider a Greek cruise upon retirement so we can actually learn to pronounce some of these aisles that are out there.
I think that's a very good suggestion.
I was going to say, as he was pronouncing that, I said, I'm pretty sure Art orders a gyro sandwich instead of a gyro.
Mayor, do you have any additional communication?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay. Council members? Wow. Okay. Mr. Vice Chairman, do we have any public comments?
Sir. We have Mr. Calvin Austin. Dr. Reverend Pastor Calvin Austin.
If I can sit through all of y'all deliberation, I know y'all can sit through my little 5-minute dissertation. My name is H. Calvin Austin III. I'm the pastor of the Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church, located at 10930 Ellaby Road. My residence is 3546 Pleasant Drive, Shreveport, Louisiana. Matt Tyler, Councilman Fleury, other members of this council. I stand before you in regards to this being Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I had the blessed and informational privilege on October the 1st at our church to have 2 of the detectives of the Domestic Violence Division, along with Corporal Marcus Hines, to come and share with my church and individuals about the onslaught of violence against men and women. I was amazed and I was surprised from listening at them talk about the numbers of cases that division of our Shreveport Police Department has to deal with only 3 detectives. That sent a bell off in my head. I was in Kroger's on Ellaby Road, and it was brought to my attention that a statement was made by one of our officers in regard to me, something that I said in regards to these 3 ladies. I'm a man, and I can stand up and speak for myself. I don't have to have nobody to talk about what I say So I'm going to tell you what I said. What I said was, if that caseload is of such, maybe there need to be more officers involved in the domestic violence division of our police department. And to hear an officer say, through an individual, from what I said, that Shreveport Police Department will never ever come again to the Mount Pleasant Church, that bothered me. I stand before you because of the things I did for this city. This city is where it's at because of something I did over 54 years ago. You are sitting where you are because I believe that there ought to be a togetherness in this city. There is no big I's and little U's. So I'm asking you, Council and Mayor, I just saw your budget presentation. Somewhere in the process, I would hope that you would try to find some funds to be able to implement some more officers to that division of our police department. Those three ladies can't do it all. Every day, every minute, there's some lady, there's some woman, there's some man is being mistreated. The caseload that those ladies laid out, to me, was devastating. We are number one. That's not a good number. So I ask of you to do what y'all can to help that department. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, let me, Reverend Austin. Reverend Austin.
I'm trying to catch up with you.
I wanted to, I don't know the scenario of what happened regarding that statement that you received from your statement, but that's neither here or there.
I was in the Mike, let me see if I can help you with this. I'm in the grocery store. I'm on an aisle, and the individual walked up to me that knew me from our area and said, I heard your name through an officer. I said, what officer? And this gentleman is somebody, I would not call his name because he is somebody that everybody in this room know. He said, it was one of our chiefs. I said, chief of what? He said, chief of our Shreveport Police Department said, you made a statement in regards that we are not doing our job, that they're not doing their job, and that you're going to make some issues. I said, I don't have to make issues. I said, I'm a man. I know how to go to the council and ask for what I want. I said, so whoever this gentleman is, you can take this word to him for me. He needs to come see me. Not send, don't send messages, email, text to me. I'm a man. Come to me. And then Mike knows, and you guys know, I don't have a problem standing up to speak. I don't come down here because I think you ought to be doing your job. But this was an issue that bothered me when I heard those young ladies talk about their caseload. And that bothered me. And then to hear this come from one of the people that supposed to be serving our city as a protector and a server. I called Councilman Bradford, and I got message to, I started to call you, Mike, but I think I went to the head, and I did not call the mayor's office. That's not her responsibility. This police department runs under the auspices of this division sitting right here. And if we got people like that sending messages like that, we are one incident away. And I've been saying this ever since Ferguson. We are one incident away in this city from a Ferguson. But if we got a bad apple on that department, they need to be out of there. I don't know who the gentleman is, Councilman, but I hope and pray that if we ever find him, I'm going to go to him as a man. But if you got something to say to me or talk about me, come to me.
Well, I apologize what happened, but I want to say this, that you would have only have been at the Family Justice Center luncheon on last Thursday to understand the level and severity of domestic violence that is occurring in this region. I think the statistics was made clear to those in attendance. The speaker was very enlightening in his understanding of what we need to do. I think the director and the assistant director, as well as the DAs who was present in the luncheon, expressed their overall concern for the rise in domestic violence, and I think that's a topic that cannot cannot be either understated or overstated in the seriousness of it. And if you made a statement, I'm sure it was just an opinion, and nobody should be following up and criticizing someone about their opinion, because I do believe, again, that Shreveport Police Department, as well as our law enforcement.
I've always been taught that the truth hurts.
Well,
nobody wants to hear the truth.
I'm not getting into whether. I'm just saying that the sensitivity of this matter should not be levied in a way that would create some insensitivity and some feelings that will create you coming here and making those expressions.
Right.
I think your contributions and record in the areas of civil rights is documented. I don't have to defend you on that, but at the same time, I would hope that no Shreveport law enforcement officer would refuse to attend a function at your church that is dealing with domestic violence just because they heard you say something that was inaccurate. But I want to again thank you for coming. But at the same time, we do have a very serious issue that I wasn't aware of until I was at the luncheon last week to really start looking at and focusing where these issues are coming from and how can they be addressed and avoided in a way that you did when you put on a program that was directly addressing these issues. And then, if you need the resources of the city, I'm sure that the mayor would accommodate you in whatever areas that you may request the need or the assistance of our law enforcement officers. Thank you for coming down again.
Just a moment, Mayor.
And I want to also just piggyback and say thank you, Councilman Bradford. And I consider the pastor here a good friend. He and I go way back in the school system with some of his accomplishments here in the city. But I do want to make one correction. The police department reports to me. And any time there is a problem, all you got to do is call us, because we are very, very sensitive to any issue involving criminal activity, domestic violence, and the list goes on. So just give me a call anytime. You know that. You got my my personal numbers, you've got my office number, but they do report to my office.
I hope I don't have to ever make that call.
I do too.
I hope I don't.
And we can investigate.
Because I feel that the situation the statement was of such. I don't come to council meeting. I think I can reach out to know what's going on.
Yes.
But that bothered me because Mr. Bradford and Councilman Fleury was at the conference last week that Mr. Mason came with Verizon, and it's domestic violence is a sensitive issue. I have 5 girls, and we wasn't trying to upstage nobody. October 1, we put it together 3 months back, and those 2 young ladies came with Marcus, with Corporal Hines, and made their presentation. And I'm hearing all these numbers, and one of the texts said out of her mouth, this is not no he say, they say. She said it's not for 3 of us to carry the kind of caseload. I started digging. That's my concern.
Okay.
And I know that the money may be funny, but I sure hope y'all can figure a way to fix that budget to help those ladies. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor.
Next we have Mr. Billy Roy Wayne. Wants to speak about a property at 8534 Broad Acres.
Yes.
Okay. State your name and address for the record, please, Mr. Wayne.
I have a couple of things to speak on. One was generated after
State your name.
If you give me an opportunity, I'll do that. I have a couple of things to speak on. One was generated when I saw something on the agenda. My name is Billy Roy Wayne, 6144 Farrington Court, Shreveport, Louisiana. Blighted property in this city, especially in certain communities, is not getting any better. There's a piece of property I spoke with Councilman Corbin about 4 months ago at 8534 Broad Street. He consequently told me he's passed it on to the mayor's administration. The property standard issues there, there's a senior citizens living there, and the property is so bad until she had to hire someone to cut the grass away so she could see her fence. Neighboring lots and neighboring blighted property has just taken over. They did some sewer repair work out there, and they took equipment on the one little street that's out there, and they messed that street up so bad it's hard to even travel. I was out there this morning because she asked me if I could help her talk to someone who could get this straight. We have to be very careful in this city. We talk about unity. We have to be very careful not to be divisive by having certain areas and certain districts and certain properties that are in more demolished state than others. So, Mayor, I'm asking whatever the administration can do through property standards to take a look at this piece of property. We've been asking for 4 months. Would you please see to it that someone takes a look at this, because she cannot afford to keep cutting grass away from vacant lots so that her home can be seen. And if they visit the area, they will see why it's difficult because of where the home is placed. Secondly, we see where we are back to naming and renaming things again for individuals and in honor of individuals. We came before this council once before and we asked that due diligence be done when we look at renaming streets and renaming entities and recognizing. That's divisive. As a community person, I tell you, there are those who have serious concerns when every time they look up, there are certain persons and certain entities and certain individuals who are recognized for things that they are not necessarily qualified for. Now, the reason I say that is because if I could get a copy, and I'm requesting that, a copy of the form, the process, the application, and how it's done before it's placed on your agenda, I would appreciate that. Because we do not want to be divisive. We want to unify. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Wayne, I want to make a statement, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And both of your issues concur in this sense. I think that the mayor introduced her budget in regards to property standards, public works. That's going to be debated. I think there is review from this council in regards to the plight and some of the care of areas of this town. I think as we get into the discussion during the budget process, there may be some opportunities for this council to introduce some amendments that will increase some appropriations to help address these issues. I want to, in the process, we will get and ascertain a lot of information on how they see that budget will be utilized in eradicating this issue. So you get the schedule, you can come. There will be an opportunity for you to make comments at that time as well. In regards to renaming streets, I agree with you. I think renaming a street in Shreveport should be a high standard. It should be warranted, and again, that's a process that we're going to consider. And I'm not for naming streets just to be naming streets. There's a difference. We had the prerogative of honoring someone with a sign, say this street is dedicated in honor of. That's a different than renaming the street.
Exactly.
I think that requires a high standard, and I'm going to express that. And that if that individual does not, in my opinion, reach that high standard, I could not support the renaming of a street if that individual have not shown their works in this city worthy of such an honor.
I agree, and there are many in the community, sir, who agree with you. And these type of situations will bring on a divisiveness that's not needed in this city, because oftentimes people do not say anything about what was done. But when you come before them and ask for legislation or votes or whatever, they aren't ignorant. They remember some things.
It's a process.
It's a process, and especially if the person is living. I have a problem with the process, period.
The chair reclaims time just a minute. Just 1 second. Councilman Jenkins, didn't you school me on that if a person owns certain percent of their property, isn't that the way the
Okay,
ordinance?
so the way, one of the provisions of the ordinance is if you've got 65% of the property owners on the street that support it, that's part of the petition to even bring it forward. There's some other, there's this 90-day
There are other
period.
standards as well.
There is a standard that the street's original name cannot be in commemoration of an individual or a formal incident in the city of Shreveport, so that couldn't be changed. There are multiple, I'll say, provisions in that ordinance that need to be taken to even consider it in the first place.
Right. Okay.
That's why, Chairperson, that's why I asked that you send a copy of this, because what
So you'll know.
what Councilman Jenkins just said, I guarantee you, 15% of the people in the city is not aware of that, or more. So we have to understand that just because we're in a position to pose big eyes and little U's, we have to consider the little U's before we start placing the big eyes, because it is not fairly done across the board. I don't like calling names, but the gentleman who just left, I know his record. Is there a street named in honor of him? I'll rest my case.
I will say one of the other requirements that
No, I'm just saying, if we do our due diligence, I can bring you a list of folks.
I guess I won't say then. I was going to say that that there are a number of requirements. This ordinance before us does meet those, but in reference to what you were saying, it sounds like probably when those were passed, there was more discussion about it. But over time, it sounds like probably. And we do a lot of those in recognition of, or those dedications instead of renamings. And so I think at times sometimes people confuse those two processes. But certainly the renamings are a much higher standard. This one before us does meet that standard, and it is. One of the things is that if it's in memory of a person, that person have been deceased for at least 2 years. So.
So I understand the process. All I'm saying is whether it's renaming or recognizing, the process needs to be revisited and looked at more from a community perspective. Whether it's renaming, it's a matter of semantics. Whether it's renaming or recognizing, it's still taking certain individuals and giving credence to those individuals who may or may not be as deserving as others.
So what I'm hearing is that the dedications are also an issue. Because, I think what we did in the discussion really was more based on street renamings, which do impact maps and Google Map and directional. That's a much bigger deal, and it's a bigger standard to meet. But you're saying that you also want to see some review of just dedications and things as well?
I want to see a review of the process in general, because if you look at it, sir, you will see that it's only certain communities in certain districts in certain areas. It's not necessarily citywide.
Yeah, well, that's true. There are cultural...
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
And if I can, Mr. Chairman,
Mayor, I'm sorry.
I want to ask Mr. Wayne if he will give me the name of I'm not even on streets because I don't do any of that. The street, the address of the property that you had a problem with, because I'm not sure, I'm not familiar with it, but I can say to you that oftentimes whenever we know, the CAO and I, we send our people there, and a lot of the properties are owned by folks that don't take care of them.
Right.
But, Mr. Bowman, since he's already emailed that one to Mr. Norman, and so we'll be working on that. But I think you know me well enough to know that I don't have any big eyes or little U's. All you got to do is contact my office, and we will work with you.
I only said that because Councilman Corbin said he had passed it on. This has been going on for 4 months, and we contacted him, and it's in his district. and he said he had passed it on to the city several times.
Okay, well,
Okay.
let me check into it.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you.
Mr. Sammy Mears, state your name and address, please. We have 3 minutes. There we go.
Sammy Mears, Sammy Mears, 1901 Centenary Boulevard, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71101. Did anyone ever watch the Carol Burnett show years back when her program was on CBS? Because if you didn't, okay, but if you did, I do a great impersonation and look forward to it today because I can do Mrs. Wiggins and Mr. Tudball for those who might not have ever have heard me do that before. Now, I know that James Flurry and Jeff Everson have heard, but now for those who have not, check this out. Now, this is Mr. Tudball and Mrs. Wiggins. Carol Burnett is on Me TV. Can you hear me, Mrs. Wiggins? Hello. Mrs. Wiggins, hello. Busy bee, and she's smacking gum. Just like she's in the Twilight Zone. Mrs. Wiggins, would you please come into my office? Yes? Did you want me to come in now? Well, of course I want you to come in now. What do you think I called you on the intercom for? Well, should I bring a pencil or a paper or something? Not unless you're going to write the directions as how to get here. No, I don't need directions. I've been in your office dozens of times. Then she gets up out of the chair and does that Mrs. Wiggins walk like this. So that was how Carol Burnett and Tim Conway became involved in doing Mrs. Wiggins and Mr. Tudball. But they got her into a tight dress just to make her walk like that. And that's what I found out one time when she was talking on one of the talk shows. And this was something that I was very interested in hearing about because I didn't know if she was just doing that on purpose or what happened. But she was on the talk and she told every one of them and the audience that they got her into a tight dress to make her walk in that Wiggins walk. And so that was something I was looking forward to talking about today, that she was able to do that. But that, hello, Mrs. Wiggins, can you hear me? Hello. And James, you know I did that on your.
That's right.
When I called you up, I told you I could do that.
On my call ID.
Yeah, and you tried the hello, and I'd go like hello. But by the way, I want y'all to know that I also miss Monty Hall because Wayne Brady made an announcement last Friday that he had passed away at age 96 from doing Let's Make a Deal.
Thank you. Any of the council members have anything?
I've got a few impressions, but I'll hold mine until next week.
All right. Council meeting is adjourned.